The forest was silent except for the faint hum of distant energy weapons. Smoke drifted between the trees, carrying the bitter scent of burning metal. Captain Rylan moved carefully, his boots crunching over broken branches. The mission was simple: retrieve the stolen human intel from the Imperial outpost. But he already knew nothing was going to be simple today. The Empire's armies had crushed dozens of human settlements in the past year. Their most feared weapon was not a ship nor a bomb, but a single warrior. Her name was whispered among soldiers: Vaelara. The Stormfang, a commander who never lost a battle, a fighter whose blade could cut through reinforced armor. No human had ever come close to defeating her. Rylan was not here to fight her. At least, that's what his orders said. But deep down, he suspected the Empire wouldn't leave its most valuable secrets unguarded. He moved deeper into the forest, his pulse steady but his senses sharp. Somewhere ahead, the stolen data pulsed inside a secure container. And somewhere near it, she would be waiting. He spotted movement. A shadow slipped between the trees, silent as the wind. For a moment he thought it was an animal, but then the glow of golden eyes caught the light. She stepped into view, her deep blue skin almost blending into the shadows. Black armor covered her form, spiked at the shoulders, engraved with symbols of her victories. She carried no rifle, only a curved blade humming with power. Her gaze locked on him like a predator sighting prey. "You should not be here." "Human," she said, her voice smooth but edged with threat. "I could say the same for you." Rylan replied, keeping his weapon lowered but ready. There was no panic in his voice. That unsettled her more than she expected. Most humans trembled when they faced her. This one looked calm, too calm. She studied him for a heartbeat longer, then began circling, her blade shifting in her hand. "You came for the data," she guessed. "You will not leave with it." Rylan's mind worked quickly. Fighting her meant death. Negotiating with her was laughable. But there was one thing humans had that no Imperial warrior could match: unpredictability. He had learned long ago that sometimes to survive, you had to act so strangely the enemy couldn't read your moves. "I didn't come for the data," he said slowly, his eyes holding hers. "I came for you." The words made her pause. It was absurd, dangerous, but something in the way he said it, firm, certain, made her hesitate. "For me?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "Because I think there's more to you than the Empire's orders." She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You know nothing about me, human." "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I know fear when I see it, and you're not afraid of me. You're afraid of yourself." Her golden eyes narrowed. The accusation cut deeper than his rifle ever could. She was proud of her victories, but she knew the cost. Her hands had ended lives without mercy. Her name inspired terror, but it also chained her to the Empire's will. And somehow this human had seen it in seconds. He stepped closer, ignoring the blade. She didn't move to stop him, though her muscles tensed. The air between them was electric, charged with something neither could name. Rylan's voice lowered, softer now. "I'm not here to kill you," he said. "I'm here to remind you you're more than their weapon." For reasons she could not explain, her heart pounded. She could feel the heat of his presence, the strange steadiness of his gaze. It was foolish, reckless. But when his hand touched her armored arm, she didn't pull away. His next move was madness. No soldier in their right mind would do it. And yet, he leaned in and pressed his lips gently to hers. It wasn't a victory kiss. It wasn't even romantic in the usual sense. It was disarming, pure, a human's way of saying, "You are not what they made you." Her eyes widened. The forest around them seemed to fade. For the first time in years, she felt her blade grow heavier in her hand, not because of the fight, but because she didn't want to lift it. Something inside her armor cracked, something far stronger than steel. When she stepped back, her voice was different, lower, almost uncertain. "You Should not have done that. Maybe, Rylan said. But now you'll have to decide whether to kill me or hear me out. Her grip on the sword loosened. For the first time in her career, the Empire's deadliest warrior did not know which choice to make. Asterisk, the forest felt heavier now, as if the air itself waited for her answer. Vaelara kept her golden eyes locked on Rylan, searching for weakness. She had faced assassins, champions, and entire human squads, but never someone who dared to cross the line between enemy and something else. Her voice cut through the silence. Do you think a kiss will make me betray my people? No, Rylan replied. But maybe it will make you question why you're still fighting for them. That struck deeper than he knew. Vaelara had been the Empire's weapon since she was old enough to hold a blade. They forged her into a living symbol of fear. Every victory brought her glory, yet also another chain. She had never been allowed to doubt. But this human's calm defiance made the thought impossible to ignore. Humans always talk too much, she muttered, masking the unease inside her. She stepped closer, the edge of her blade grazing the front of his armor. One order from me, and you'll be dead before you finish your next sentence. Rylan didn't flinch. Then you'll prove I'm right. That all you are is what they made you. The words burned like fire in her mind. She hated how easily they reached the part of her she tried to bury. For years, she had told herself she was free because she chose to win. But deep down she knew. She had no choice at all. Before she could answer, movement in the trees caught her attention. Imperial scouts, 3 of them, were advancing through the mist. Rylan saw them too. They carried plasma rifles, and their armor gleamed with the silver crest of the Emperor's Guard. If they saw him with her, they would shoot him on sight. Stay behind me, Vaelara ordered. You're protecting me now? He asked. Her glare silenced him. Don't misunderstand. If they kill you, they'll ask questions about me. I don't like questions. The scouts emerged, their weapons already half raised. Commander Vaelara, one greeted, bowing slightly. We detected human presence in this sector. Have you engaged? Her mind raced. The Empire's orders were clear: no human leaves. Alive, but for reasons she didn't have time to examine, she found herself saying, the human escaped before I arrived. I will track him myself. The scouts exchanged uneasy looks. Are you sure you don't need assistance? Her eyes sharpened. Do you doubt my skill? No, Commander, the leader said quickly. We'll continue our sweep. They left as swiftly as they had come. Only when the sound of their steps faded did Rylan speak. You just lied for me. I told them what they needed to hear, she said flatly. But you could have killed me right there. He pressed. She turned away from him, moving deeper into the forest. Come, she ordered. If you want to leave alive, follow me. Rylan hesitated. And if I don't? She glanced over her shoulder. Then you'll die alone in this forest. They moved through the mist, the sound of distant engines echoing somewhere beyond the trees. The silence between them was heavy, but not the same as before. She was still dangerous, lethal. Even but something in her steps lacked the cold certainty she carried earlier. After an hour, they reached a ridge overlooking the Imperial outpost. The stolen human intel was inside one of the secured vaults. Below, patrol drones hovered in strict patterns, and soldiers marched in tight formations. Rylan studied the layout, planning his approach. You can't get in there alone, Vaelara said. Wasn't planning to, he replied. You know the codes, don't you? She stiffened. You assume much, human. I assume you've been thinking about what I said, he countered. About being more than their weapon. Her jaw tightened. If I help you, the Empire will hunt me until the day I die. Then maybe, Rylan said quietly. It's time to decide if that's better than living as their prisoner. The wind whispered between them, carrying the faint scent of the burning outpost. She didn't answer right away. For the first time in her life, Vaelara was weighing something heavier than victory or defeat. She was weighing herself. Finally, she spoke. "If we do this, there's no going back." Rylan held her gaze. "I'm not asking you to go back. I'm asking you to move forward." Something shifted in her eyes, just a flicker, but enough to tell him the fight was no longer between human and alien. It was between her and the Empire. Night fell over the forest, bringing with it a cold silver light from the twin moons above. The Imperial outpost glowed faintly in the distance, surrounded by shimmering energy shields. Rylan crouched beside Vaelara on the ridge, studying the patrol patterns below. Every few minutes, a drone swept across the perimeter, scanning for life signs. "Your shield codes," Rylan said quietly. "We'll need them to get inside." She didn't answer at first. Her golden eyes stayed fixed on the soldiers below. But her mind was far away. She thought of her years in service, the medals, the ceremonies, the whispered fear in her enemies' voices. It was everything she had been raised to want. Yet somehow, the memory of a human's kiss in the middle of a burning forest felt stronger than all of it. "I can get us inside," she finally said. "But once we're in, you do exactly as I say," Rylan nodded. "Agreed." They moved quickly, keeping low, silent as shadows. At the base of the ridge, Vaelara keyed a sequence into a wrist device hidden under her armor. A faint ripple shimmered across the air as a section of the shield flickered and died. They slipped through the gap, sealing shut behind them. Inside the perimeter, the air was thick with the smell of fuel and metal. Soldiers marched in precise formations, their boots striking the ground in unison. Vaelara led him through narrow service tunnels, avoiding main corridors. She knew the patrol schedules by heart. Every step brought them closer to the vault and closer to being discovered. At one corner, they stopped suddenly. 2 Imperial guards were posted outside a secured door. Rylan reached for his weapon, but Vaelara's hand shot out, stopping him. "Not here," she whispered. He frowned. "Then, how?" Her eyes narrowed, and before he could speak again, she walked straight toward the guards. Her presence alone was enough to make them stand straighter. "Commander Vaelara," one said quickly, saluting. "I'm moving classified items to a secure location," she said, her tone cold and commanding. "Stand aside." They obeyed without question, stepping aside as she pressed her palm to the door scanner. The lock disengaged with a hiss. Rylan followed her inside, the heavy door sealing behind them. The vault was dim, lit only by the pale glow of containment cases lining the walls. At the center, on a reinforced pedestal, sat the stolen human intel. A sleek black case, humming faintly with encrypted energy fields. "That's it," Rylan murmured. "Vaelar." He approached it, her footsteps echoing. She could feel the weight of what she was doing pressing down on her. Every instinct from her training screamed at her to destroy the case and arrest the human. Instead, she disengaged the locks and handed it to him. "Take it," she said. Rylan hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" Her jaw tightened. "Because I'm tired of killing for an empire that would throw me away the moment I'm no longer useful." Before he could reply, the vault alarms blared. Red lights flashed, and the door locks engaged. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Unauthorized access detected. All units converge on Vault 3. Rylan's grip tightened on the case. "We're trapped." "Not yet," Vaelara said. She pulled a small device from her belt and slammed it against the wall. A wave of static burst outward, scrambling the security systems for a few precious seconds. "Follow me." They ran through a side maintenance hatch, emerging into a narrow ventilation corridor. The alarms still wailed, echoing through the metal walls. Boots thundered in the distance as soldiers scrambled to seal the exits. As they neared the outer perimeter, a voice shouted behind them, "Commander, stop!" Vaelara turned to see one of her own lieutenants, weapon raised. His eyes darted between her and the human. "You're betraying us," he said, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Get out of my way," she warned. "I can't," he said. "You were our pride, our blade. Don't do this." Her grip tightened on her weapon. She could kill him and clear the path. But Rylan's earlier words echoed in her mind. "You're more than their weapon." For a long second, she didn't move. Finally, she lowered her blade. "Then you'll have to try and stop me." Shock flickered in the lieutenant's eyes. That hesitation was all she needed. She shoved past him, dragging Rylan through the shield gap once more. The cold forest air hit them like a wave as they vanished into the night, for the first time. In her life, Vaelara had openly defied the Empire. And there was no turning back. The forest was no longer silent. Search drones cut through the night sky, their beams slicing across the trees. The low rumble of Imperial dropships shook the ground, scattering flocks of nocturnal birds. Vaelara led Rylan through a narrow ravine, using the jagged walls to hide their heat signatures. "They'll deploy trackers soon," she said, her voice low but urgent. "We need to be far from here before sunrise." Rylan adjusted the weight of the intel case in his hands. "How far is safe?" "There's no such thing as safe anymore," she replied. "Not for me. And definitely not for you." They moved quickly, their breaths clouding in the cold night air. Vaelara's senses were sharp, trained to pick up the faintest sound of pursuit. Every twig snap, every shift in the wind could be the signal of an ambush. She had spent her life hunting enemies in these conditions. Now she was the one being hunted. A sudden burst of light swept over them. Vaelara reacted instantly, grabbing Rylan and pulling him under a fallen tree just as a drone passed overhead. Its sensors whined, scanning the ground. She pressed close to him, holding perfectly still. The faint warmth of his body contrasted sharply with the cold, damp earth beneath them. When the drone moved on, Rylan whispered, "You've done this before." "Too many times," she said, standing. "The difference is back then, I was the one chasing." They continued, the terrain becoming steeper. The ground gave way to moss-covered rocks, slick with mist. Somewhere in the distance, a river roared, masking the sound of their steps. But it also masked the steps of others. Halfway down a slope, Vaelara stopped suddenly. Her golden eyes narrowed. "They're close." Rylan's hand went to his weapon. "How many?" She listened for a moment before answering. 4, maybe 5. Moving fast. The next second, blaster fire tore through the trees. Rylan dove behind a boulder as energy bolts scorched the air above him. Vaelara didn't hesitate. She drew her blade, its hum fierce in the darkness, and moved with deadly precision. She struck like a shadow, disarming one soldier before they could even aim. Rylan returned fire, dropping another attacker with a precise shot. But the rest pressed forward, forcing them toward the river. "We can't hold them here," he shouted. Vaelara parried a strike, her voice calm despite the chaos. "We're not going to." She kicked an enemy back, grabbed Rylan's arm, and leapt with him off the riverbank. The icy water swallowed them whole, the current dragging them downstream. Rylan fought for breath as the current slammed them against rocks, but Vaelara's grip was unyielding. She pulled him toward a shadow under the far bank, a hidden hollow beneath the roots of an ancient tree. They surfaced inside the dark, cramped space, gasping for air. Water dripped from the roots above, and the roar of the river muffled the shouts of their pursuers. "They'll search upstream," Vaelara said between breaths. "We have a little time." Rylan leaned back against the damp earth wall. "You risked your life for me again." Her gaze flicked to him, unreadable in the dim light. "You don't understand. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because I can't go back to who I was." Rylan studied her face. Even in the shadows, he could see the conflict there. "Then maybe it's not about going back at all. Maybe it's about finding out who you really are. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the river filled the space between them. Then Vaelara moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. They won't stop. Rylan, the Empire will send their best hunters, people I trained, people who know my every move. Then we'll have to be unpredictable, he said. A faint smile touched her lips. You really don't know when to be afraid, do you? Not when I'm standing next to someone like you, he replied. Something in her chest tightened at his words. She had been called 1,000 things, warrior, commander, executioner, but never something that implied trust. Outside, the sound of dropships faded into the distance. For now, they had escaped. But Vaelara knew the hunt had only begun. By dawn, the forest had turned to mist and shadow. The river's current had carried them miles from the Imperial search zone. Rylan followed Vaelara along a narrow trail, his boots sinking into damp earth. The stolen intel case was still secure. But every step felt heavier with the knowledge that the Empire would not rest until it was recovered. We need shelter, Vaelara said, scanning the terrain. Somewhere they won't expect us to go. Where's that? Rylan asked her, golden eyes fixed on the jagged hills ahead. An old human outpost, abandoned since the First War. Even the Empire avoids it. They say it's cursed. Rylan gave a dry smile. You believe in curses? I believe in using fear to my advantage, she said. They pushed forward, the mist thickening around them. The outpost emerged from the fog like the bones of a dead giant, rusted towers leaning at dangerous angles, walls cracked and overgrown with vines. A faded human flag clung to one pole, its colors washed pale by years of weather. Inside, the air was stale and cold. Fallen. Beams and shattered glass crunched under their feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling as they moved through the empty corridors. The place had been abandoned in a hurry. Half-eaten rations still sat on tables. Chairs lay overturned, and a broken comms panel flickered weakly in one corner. This will do, Vaelara said. For now. They found a storage room with a single narrow window. Rylan set the intel case on an old metal table while Vaelara sealed the door with a strip of her armor plating. It wasn't perfect, but it would slow down anyone who found them. As the hours passed, the silence pressed in. Rylan worked on opening the intel case, tapping in bypass codes. Vaelara sat in the corner, sharpening her blade, her eyes never truly resting. Finally, Rylan spoke. You still haven't told me why you spared me back there. Why you lied to your own soldiers. She didn't look up from her blade. Because I've seen what happens to those who serve the Empire too long. They either die in glory, or they live long enough to become nothing but a tool. I was close to becoming the second, and now? He asked. Her eyes lifted to his. Now, I'm not sure what I am. The honesty in her voice was rare, and Rylan didn't miss it. Then, maybe this is your chance to choose for yourself. Before she could answer, a faint sound echoed from the hall, metal scraping against stone. Vaelara was on her feet in an instant, blade drawn. Rylan grabbed his weapon. The sound grew louder, closer, until a shadow passed outside the storage. Room window. Vaelara motioned for silence. The shadow stopped moving. Then, with a sudden crash, the door burst inward. 3 figures in dark cloaks stormed inside, moving with inhuman speed. Their faces were hidden behind masks, but their movements were precise. Imperial Hunters. The Empire's most dangerous. Trackers. One lunged at Rylan, but Vaelara intercepted, her blade clashing against a pair of electrified knives. Sparks lit the dark room as the fight exploded into chaos. Rylan fired at another hunter, the blast glancing off reinforced armor. Go! Vaelara shouted. Take the case and run. I'm not leaving you. Rylan yelled back. She blocked another strike, her voice fierce. If they get that intel, all of this is for nothing. Rylan hesitated only a moment before ducking under. A blade swing and grabbing the case. He bolted through the broken doorway. the sound of metal on metal ringing behind him. Vaelara fought like the warrior she had been trained to be, but something in her strikes had changed. She wasn't fighting for the Empire anymore. She was fighting for her own choice. Every movement was precise, fueled by something deeper than duty. One hunter fell to the floor with a broken mask, but the others pressed harder. Vaelara backed toward the hallway, leading them away from Rylan's escape route. She knew what this meant. If she stayed, she could hold them off. But she might not survive. For the first time, she realized she didn't care about survival if it meant Rylan would make it out alive. Asterisk. The corridors of the abandoned outpost shook with the sound of battle. Sparks lit the darkness as Vaelara's blade clashed with the hunter's weapons. Each strike was faster, more desperate. She could feel her strength waning, but she refused to fall while Rylan still had a chance. One hunter lunged at her, but she twisted aside, driving her knee into his chest and sending him crashing into a rusted support beam. The second came from behind, blade raised high. Vaelara spun, parrying at the last moment, the impact jarring her arm. Pain lanced through her muscles, but she ignored it. Outside, Rylan ran through the cracked halls, the intel case clutched tight. His breath came in sharp bursts. He knew Vaelara was buying him time, but every step away from her felt heavier than the last. He reached the outer wall and ducked through a collapsed section, vanishing into the morning fog dot back inside. Vaelara's blade locked against the last standing hunter's weapon. His mask reflected her face, a warrior who had once fought without question. Now she fought for her own choice, and that made her strikes burn hotter. With a final surge, she shoved him back and swept her blade in a clean arc. The mask split, and the hunter fell. Silence filled the room. She stood in the debris, her breath ragged. The fight was over, but the weight of what she had done was only beginning to settle. She had killed Imperial Hunters, her own kind. There was no forgiveness for that in the Empire's eyes. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Vaelara raised her blade, only to lower it when Rylan emerged from the shadows, the intel case still in his hands. "You came back," she said, her voice low. "You didn't think I'd leave you here, did you?" He replied, her lips curved in something between a smirk and disbelief. "You're a fool, human." "Maybe," Rylan said, stepping closer. "But I'm your fool now." The words caught her off guard. She had been called many things: commander, killer, weapon, but never something so disarmingly human. "The intel is safe," he continued. "If we move fast, we can get it to the Resistance before the Empire locks down the sector." She shook her head. "You don't understand. They'll chase us to the edge of the galaxy. We'll never be safe." "Then we'll run," he said simply. Together, something in her chest shifted. The walls she had built around herself, the armor of discipline and fear, had already cracked when he kissed her in the forest. Now they felt like they were collapsing completely. Slowly, she lowered her blade and stepped closer. The morning light through the broken wall caught her golden eyes, softening their fire. Without a word, she reached out and rested a hand against his cheek. "You're dangerous," she murmured. "I've been told that before," he said. And then, without hesitation, she kissed him. This time, it wasn't a reckless move in the middle of battle. It was a choice, a promise, a surrender not of defeat, but of trust. When they pulled apart, she didn't look like the Empire's deadliest warrior anymore. She looked like someone who had finally decided her own fate. "We'd better move," she said. "If we're going to outrun the galaxy, we start now." They slipped into the mist together, their silhouettes fading into the light. Behind them, the abandoned outpost stood in silence, a grave for the person Vaelara used to be. Ahead of them stretched an uncertain road, but for the first time in her life, she was walking it by choice, and the Empire's most feared warrior would never fight for the Empire again.